Alrighty. I cut out my barking to test my microphone. But hi, hello, welcome back to my second video. I would like to say it's my first because the very first video I uploaded, I am aware that you have to listen to it in podcast format. We're gonna put that aside. We're gonna unpack that a different day because I might delete that video, and this will be the first official video of this channel, but I don't know. I think I might just leave it up there. So that you guys can enjoy it, like I said, in podcast format, even if it's pixelated and looks really silly. Today, this is kind of a reading catch-up. I did not do a video in July, like I most likely said in my last video, because I had some technical problems where I fistfight OBS very often. OBS makes me upset a lot, but I was not using OBS for my videos because I was using the camera function, because I was like, oh, well, if I don't want to bully OBS for the day, I can just use what comes with the computer software. And then the problem is that it was like, we don't know where your microphone is, and we don't have permission to use it. And so I was like, lies and slander on my name. And so I look in settings, and it did have access to it. I just do not know why it wasn't working, but I have come back to OBS because I managed to get the camera to now fit the full screen. So that was the other problem. So my camera wouldn't fit OBS. But now it does. And now everything looks shiny and nice. As you can see, the room is more decorated since you last saw. My hair is longer. I am thriving. I have tea next. Oh, it's on this side. I have some tea. It is butterscotch caramel in my fancy new mug. Ignore that there's a small little stain right there. We see nothing. But I do have a new bookshelf. I do have a lot of new books, and I have a lot of things to talk about. I'm going to be kind of smashing together August and July into one hodgepodge kind of video, because I did go through a tiny bit of reading slump, I want to say, in July. I didn't read as much as I usually do. I have them all right here. So you can conveniently take a peruse at them while I yap at you. But I enjoyed a lot of it. I don't know. I kind of started halfway through July really grinding out my manuscript and going through kind of the process of really just hammering things out, because I am a weird mix of being a pantser, and that I know that if I try to plot everything out to the letter, it won't work out for me and I will deviate from it. But I have the entire plot in my head, so I outline loosely. I get the skeleton down, and then I'll just kind of yap and get there. We go from point A to this weird wiggly worm that kind of goes down, and then we get to point B. That's kind of how I tend to do it, and then as I draft, I tend to iron it out a lot more. It's been working for me. It's what made my Act 1 of my book at least not garbage, so there's that, and I'm putting it through the ringer of peer feedback, so one of my peer reviewers will probably watch this video. Shout out to you, girl. Love you. But we're going to go over things that I read this month. I kind of have a silly, oh yeah, the other reason why I didn't read that much is because I got to Babel. I finally read Babel, and I have a lot of opinions on that book. I'll probably have to mark that section with spoilers, because I need to talk about everything. But let me scooch these goobers off the shelf, and we will get started. I offended my camera a little bit. First book we have is going to be Chlorine by Jade Song. This book is I want to say it's English is a literary thriller. It does come in ebook version if you guys want to listen to the ebook. I've not heard anything about the ebook, but I do know that this book is very good. This is a debut novel, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. It is a debut novel. So this book is basically about a young girl who kind of goes through her life, and about how her main goal is to become a mermaid at all costs. And I love this book, and this is probably the first book that got me a little heated in Goodreads reviews, because I don't like to say that there's a specific way to interpret a book. I think that's very redundant and tends to honestly limit both our ability as readers, but also the author's ability to tell multiple stories within a single narrative, because there's a lot of ways you can go into a book and dissect it. This book, I don't think a lot of people who read this book knows what it was going for, and that upset me a lot. Because a lot of people were saying that the narrative was too distant. It was, I had some that I read, reviews were like, she's a little egotistical, which made me laugh very, very badly. And I think that there is this expectation that you're going to be able to really emotionally connect with the narrator. And personally, I did. I think that if you can't I don't know. You gotta pick your struggle, because the point of this book is that it is a girl who, obviously she's a little mentally ill, but she believes she's not a human being and that she is better than all of us because she's not a human being. So if her narration comes off as a little dry, a little egotistical, it's probably because she states at least once that she thinks that she is better than us. And I think we kind of missed the mark sometimes in the reviews, because a lot of people were saying that they did not like her. Which, again, you are entitled to not like her. But I find it very silly that a lot of people were saying that she was a bad narrator. They didn't like her that much because they felt like she was distant. But they really hammered home in a lot of reviews that they thought, I need to stop fidgeting with the books. I told myself that my goal for this recording was to look at the camera more and fidget with the books less, because I do this with my paperbacks. I kind of barrel roll them in my hands, so I need to not do that. That's why my paperbacks are like shit. But yeah, a lot of people had a lot of things to say about this book that I really strongly disagreed with. I think this book does a really good dissection of what it feels like, to be, first of all, closeted. So they go through a lot of, it talks about queerness, it talks about racism, and especially being an immigrant, it talks about that a lot, and I thought it was a really good perspective. And honestly, the aspects of it being weird, I'm a girl who loves a silly, goofy, weird fucking book. I like Atessa Moshfegh, I hope I'm saying her last name right, but I liked La Bona. I liked My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which isn't like a thriller, but it's just a weird book. I love me some Mona Awad. I loved Rouge, and I'm currently reading Bunny. I usually say what book I'm currently reading, so that is what I'm reading. I actually have it right next to me, next to Oathbringer. Here is Bunny with its fancy pink cover. I love the cover of this book. It's so cute. But Chlorine kind of fits that niche for me where I like really weird fiction. So personally, this isn't my alley. When I heard about it online, I was like, this is going to be fire and I'm going to enjoy it. And I did. So I think that a lot of people are critical on it because they honestly, I just don't think this book is for a lot of people. I don't want to be exclusionary and I guess elitist with my literary fiction, but no, I don't think this is meant for a lot of people. It paints a very specific picture of life, and if you can't connect with it or get with it, then maybe you shouldn't read it. But anyways, this was a very good book for me, and I enjoyed it very much. Our next book is by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Now, I fuck with Silvia Moreno-Garcia very much. Mexican Gothic was probably one of my favorite books of last year. Did I read it last year or did I read it this year? I cannot recall if I read this in the fever dream that was my last semester of college. For those of you who don't know, I am now a freshly graduated alum from university. I have my shiny English degree that I'm very proud of. Love her very much. She is at the bottom of this cart right now because I want to get a nice frame for it and put it on I will manhandle you guys briefly. But I have a fancy little wall with all this cool shit on it, and I want to put my degree up there. I apologize. Oh, well now, so you guys are typically looking down upon me from the heavens. So, forgive me for fucking with the camera. But like I said, I have a fancy little wall, and I want to put my degree on it, as I deserve for working so hard for it. But like I said, I don't have a frame for it, so that's why it's at the bottom. I apologize if I ramble a lot when I do these videos. I have a hard time locking in. But anyways, I did read Seventh Veil of Salome. I always want to call her Shalom. I don't know why, but Salome, I think is how you say it. First of all, let me be a little bit of a nerd, but in her other book, in Mexican Gothic, she does these fucking cunty little film, like, posters that go in the front of the book to introduce you to it, and it's so cool. I hope she never stops doing that, because it's literally, it makes my time, like, it makes my day. They're so cool, and it's such a silly, awesome way to market the book, and it's like because, she hones in on kind of like the 1950s, not Hollywood aesthetic, but she likes to do 1950s film, kind of thriller, things like that, and Mexican Gothic has a very similar cover. I will probably put a picture of it on screen, because that one's also very cunt. But this one, in particular, this book, I liked it, but it did not have the little pizzazz that makes it a Silvia Moreno-Garcia book for me. The thriller element, like the slow burn kind of to the ending, felt extremely weak to me. I predicted it, unfortunately, like halfway through the book. I was like, oh, that's gonna happen. I loved the elements, like, the story of Salome, like when she's actually narrating from Salome's POV, I could leave it or take it. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. But when it's Laura, I don't want to fuck up her name, Vera. Oh, I flip flopped the first letter of her. Her last name is Larios, I think. Yes, Larios. I flip flopped the letters. I apologize for not speaking English correctly. Vera, don't know why I want to call her Laura. That aside, Vera, she's this like unknown girl. She did a little bit of acting. She's done theater. She's really beautiful. She catches the eye of this like I think she's a casting or an assistant, and she shows him to the director. And he's like, I want that lady. And so she goes, and she's the starring role. She's unknown. And it ticks off this other girl who I also believe, that's why I have the back with me always. Yeah, it is Nancy. Her name's Nancy. I don't know. I messed up the main character's name, so I'm gonna take my badge of shame and walk out the door with it. But Nancy and Vera's points of view, like when they're going linearly side by side, like parallel, they're amazing. Nancy, D1 hater, to a degree that is impressive, but having them operate side by side is just really interesting. And because Nancy is basically like someone who I would say peaked in high school. She was a failed child star, and she can't get any roles. She's really pretty. She gaslights this man into thinking that she likes him, and then she leads him on and strings him along to hoping that she could potentially get with men that are richer than him. And Vera endures horrific racism the entire book, like just always, constantly, because she is a Hispanic girl. She's Mexican, and you know, this is, again, like I said, 1950s Hollywood, where the only people you really like looking at are hot white women or women of color through the lens of that they're an exotic commodity. They're strange and, you know, taboo and things like that. And smack it over here. So I said, try not to fidget with them this video. But like I said, the twist is unfortunately predictable for me. I always say that getting the English degree was wonderful, but it does irreparable damage to my ability to enjoy twists and kind of turns in books, especially in thrillers. That's why I tend to not read them, although I probably should. I want to read at least one thriller for spooky season, and that is my goal. I will probably be popping in, I want to say probably in October, and probably picking one up. Last year I did read, I don't remember when I read it, but I read Slewfoot. That was a amazing book, and I wish I'd read it in October because it suited the vibes perfectly. But I have some goals. I'll make another video on September's goals because I also need to talk to you about my vast undertaking of trying to finish the Stormlight Archive in October, potentially. I know myself, and I know that when I get through Oathbringer, because Oathbringer was a rough one for me, that book ages me significantly. I am hoping and praying that Rhythm of War is going to be amazing, because apparently it's a lot of chapters about Navani, and I like Navani. Okay. Sorry, we're not talking about that. I'm sorry. I get off on tangents. But So the Veil of Salome was pretty good. I think I gave that book about 3 stars, if I'm not mistaken. But I wish that book had kind of just leaned into more of the thriller aspects. It was very predictable. I think she wanted to focus more on sexism and racism, which is very fair. She is extremely entitled to do that. It is her narrative. She can do whatever the hell she wants. And it was still a good book. It was still enjoyable. I apologize. I'll probably cut that out. But, I think that it was probably one of her weaker books. Just because Mexican Gothic is just amazing. It lives up to the title of Gothic. It is one of the few book talk books I think that's actually been a home run for me. Especially in terms of being a Gothic. I've studied Gothic in an academic setting. I know all about the genre and like what it entails. So especially when I read... So One Dark Window is like the book that I have the most beef with on Book Talk, because people are like, this is peak romantasy Gothic. And I get in there, I'm like, where the fuck is the Gothic? It's just occasionally spooky settings. That is not what a Gothic is. And they pissed me off to peak heights. And it also doesn't help that the romance wasn't very good either. It was very insta-love, very dumb as well, because she verbally will admit, she'll be like, this guy could murder me, but it's okay, he's hot. And I don't like that. I'm sorry. I will stand on the hill that if your characters fall in love in like 2 pages, that's not good. The only thing I really loved about that book because it has very sparse world building as well, is Ione, I think that's how you say her name, the sister or the cousin to the main character, and the fucking magic system. Magic system in that book is really good. I really liked it, and I was very intrigued by that, and I think her name is Elspeth. I might be messing up her name. Whatever the fuck she has going on with her little demon creature that's with her. Very interesting facets of the book that carried me to read, like to finish it, but I'm still on the fence about whether or not I want to finish the whole duology and read the second one. If I hate myself enough, I'll give it a try. We'll see. There are very few books I will not read. Most of the ones I won't read are probably going to be Sarah J. Maas, because I'm sorry. I read Throne of Glass when I was in middle school, and I hated it. So I doubt that's going to change. You know, if I'm not mistaken, Throne of Glass was YA. So if the target demographic, which was me at a young age, wasn't liking it, then I doubt my grown-ass adult self is going to like it. But continuing on, we had my one, like, non-fiction for the year. I can't even recall if I've read non-fiction in terms of, like, in my own personal time this year beyond Susan Sontag's essays. I've heard they were very good, and I wanted to see what they were all about. There are a few essays of hers that I really like. I don't know, it's like a mixed bag of nuts. You know, it's trail mix with a few M&M's short. In the sense of, I think that she has some good things to say in here, but my problem is I don't think she's confident enough to say them. I think that she's very wishy-washy with what she wants to say, and I honestly think that she's saying a lot of nothing, too. And it's one means to interpret, like, what I liked about her, specifically her reviews on things, is that she does give, like, vital historical context into the lives of these authors and why they wrote their works the way that they did. But she kind of, like, meanders around a point for all of her essays, except for probably the science fiction one, her interpretation essay, and I would like to say her essay on camp. Her essay on camp was so fucking long, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I kind of skimmed through that one more than I probably should have. But her essay on interpretation, I also feel like, is weird. Like I said, I feel like she will arrive to a point, present it to you, and then immediately push you off a cliff, in the sense of she'll be like, look, isn't this cool? Anyways, we're going into this other topic here, and I know that I talk like that a lot, but she doesn't fully elaborate and expand on her points, which is why I feel like she's not confident in the kind of scholarly world, because if she was, she would back it up, instead of just being like, I think this, that's it. I will not elaborate and I will not expand. And then she just does that for the entirety of this book. And this is a pretty fat book. And also doesn't help that the font is weird. But I've also annotated a fuck ton in this book. Because I had to. I don't like to annotate my books. I don't mind dog-earing my books. I have Evan Friss's book, The History of the American Bookshop. I dog-eared the living shit out of that book because I didn't want to annotate it, but I love that book. That was a great nonfiction for me. Oh yeah, that was my other nonfiction I read this year. Never mind. I lied. But this book, I had to highlight it because if I didn't, I did not know where we were going and I would forget and then I'd have to go reread over and over and over again. And I can usually track what people are saying pretty well. I'm not a stranger to academic literature. Like I flaunted probably like 5 to 7 minutes ago, I have a fancy shiny degree now. So I know how to read things that are long and a little dry, and sometimes we don't arrive to the point. But hers was just really bad because she did that in every single paper. Like there was no moments where I felt like she really hit home what she wanted to say, and I feel like she could have done well with drafting her papers a few more times. Because a lot of the meandering things, I tend to do that in my own academic writing, but I have to nail it out, and I will always in peer reviews go, hey, if I start yapping and ranting about something that doesn't matter, I need you to highlight it for me so I can either delete it or draft it out, because I need to know what I'm saying. And that's why I always say, if you're writing a paper, make sure you highlight the pieces of it. And always make sure that if you have a quote, you explain it. Because those are the top things I always see, is that people, they'll have like maybe a topic sentence, they won't provide context, they'll just launch into quotes, and then they get a little confused. And no transition sentences. Please put transition sentences on your essays as well. Not saying I'm an English professor, but please do that. That is the thing that I see a lot that people don't do. Because it will make your writing better. But I think that she could have really benefited from going through and being like, I want to say this in every single paragraph. I know that the intro, conclusion, 3-body paragraph thing is not a good way to write papers. You should never write your papers specifically with only a few paragraphs. I have never written a paper that had just an intro, 3 paragraphs, and a conclusion. I usually have an intro paragraph that's really beefy because of my theses, whatever. They're very long, but I have like a bajillion body paragraphs because I like to section it out nicely. So, like I said, small essay ranting, how to write an essay rant aside, I'll move into our next book, which is Before I Let Go. So as we're going in chronological order, this is like the thick of, I want to say, July. This book is probably peak adult romance for me. And that is specifically because it actually talks about legitimate real world problems in the sense of these are adult issues that an adult marriage would end over, and divorce being one of the keystones of the book was really nice. I think the only thing, and we might get into spoiler territory here, so I might, warning now, if you don't want me to talk about specifically my major issue with this book, then I recommend probably skip this one and my review of Babel, because I also have to talk about a lot of spoilers, so I apologize. But you have other books that I've yapped about to enjoy, but in particular, this book talks about a couple who is divorced. They're navigating owning a business together, they're navigating co-parenting, and they're also navigating the fact that their son is extremely traumatized because a lot of people in their family died back to back, and their parents, his parents broke up, which is a very reasonable thing, and they're putting him in therapy, which I greatly support. But the biggest fumble of this book is how they handled the teenage daughter, Deja. I honestly hated that part. It's very clear that their son is traumatized, and he's going through a lot of problems with grief and being able to process that. He's very young. He's like, honestly, 11, and that's hard for a child to go through. But I don't know why we can acknowledge that with the son and then turn around and look at the daughter and be like, she doesn't need therapy at all. Flabbergasted me, jaw on floor, and not in a good way. Because it's very clear that she's also not coping well with what happened. She blames her mom, she berates her mom, she says horrid things about her that honestly, I would smack the shit out of my kid if they said that about me. And they just are like, oh, that's just Deja basically being a bitch. She's just being a teenage girl, and I'm like, no, I fear that is incorrect, because no teenage girl has smoke for their mom to the degree that Deja does. She hates her mom, unfairly as well. There are very few things she says where I'm like, that is a fair thing to say, because I'm kind of like, girl, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You were 14, 15. What are you talking about? But instead of so she's very obviously lashing out. And instead of being like, we should also put her in therapy, they just kind of allow her to bully her mom, Yasmin, and do nothing about it. Because in my opinion, the anger and the lashing out is probably because she, like I said, she blames her mom for these things, but they don't want to take her to get professional help for the same issues that they do with their son. And that has always confused me. When I finished this book, I was like, this is a great book. Communication is the keystone. It's the whole part of where you get to see these adults finally communicate and go and have breakthroughs in their problems, and then, like I said, spoiler warning, come together as a couple in the end. And then we drop the ball with the teenage daughter, and I don't know why. I really cannot think of a conceivable reason as to why, because she, the author, Kennedy Ryan, does a great job of talking about all these other topics and presenting therapy and how toxic masculinity can convince men that they don't need therapy. And I really love that part of the story. But apparently our emotionally scarred and traumatized teenage daughter does not deserve to also go to therapy. And that's something that pissed me off, as you can tell. Because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't logically make sense to me. Especially since the mom preaches going to therapy. But that aside, I thought this book was great, and I really want to see, it's the best friend who's married to this fuck-ass white man named Edward, who's a horrible man. I really want to read the second book. It's a trilogy, as far as I'm concerned. I think her name is Soleil. I really genuinely do not remember the name of this character. I'm really bad with names and dates. So please do not ask me to remember your birthday, and do not ask me to remember your name after we have just met, because I will not be able to. But I need to read that book, because I need to get my vindication of her leaving this fucking horrible man. So then I can then get on here and rant to you about how she left that fuck-ass man. But I cannot, because Barnes & Noble has not had the second one. They only have the third one. But that's okay. I have like dead skin on my lip and I need to pick it off. It's pissing me off. Anyways. My other book that I've read. This book, unfortunately, took me out. In the sense of... I have mixed feelings on it. And this book is going to be Babel. By R.F. Kuang. Now, I read the Poppy War trilogy. I like the Poppy War. Dragon Republic, when I first read it, I thought it was great, and then the moment I started thinking about it really hard, I was like, this book's fucking awful. And then I hated The Burning God. I think that book is so fucking boring. I hate it in the sense of just that it's just bad. And specifically, Rin is a strange character to me, in the sense of, in the first book, she's built up as this girl who doesn't know anything. She's trying really hard, and she has a fairly consistent character in the first book, and then as the books go on, it gets more inconsistent logically. I get that she's supposed to represent a historical dictator, she goes a little crazy. I mean, she's doing opium, and she has gods. Like, there's a lot going on with her, so her being a little unstable is not the issue. It's the logical inconsistencies of that she's built up as a very smart character, and yet everyone around her is like, girl, you're fucking stupid. So two things cannot be right at the same time. And that's why I didn't like those books. So coming into Babel, I heard everyone say, like, oh, this is a textbook. And I'm like, that might be great. Because this author, she's very fucking smart. She is probably one of the smarter authors I've ever read. In the sense of, she's got a lot of fancy degrees. And she's clearly proven herself in terms of her merit as a author who's willing to produce work that is very scholarly. And I feel like that was a word salad sentence. Basically, she's really smart. And she writes very academic. I don't know why I said that like that. So this book takes place in the 1820s. In England, it deals with imperialism, racism, translation, sexism. It's a whole, canoodle of things. And this book suffers from, honestly, I think that, and this is something that I'm worried about in my own work, I feel like she's clearly young and she's still trying to revise her own style. But also, who the fuck edited this? Who let her do some of these things? Because... okay, there's like three main things I don't like. One, the main character, the person we follow with the most, has maybe 2 moments of having a personality, and other than that, he is just the sounding board for her describing the historical context of the setting, her world building, which is pretty decent, and occasionally magic system and being like a mouthpiece like for racism is bad. And I don't think that's a horrible thing. Yes, racism is bad, but she's very heavy-handed with her themes, and I get it. Some people are fucking stupid, and they probably will read this book and be like, haha, why is Letty in the wrong? And I won't get into that too much, but there will still be people who say things like that, and I acknowledge that, but this is heavy-handed to a degree where I'm like, girl, I need you to set aside the minority of idiots who read your work, and I need you to make things a little less heavy-handed, because I get it, I understand it now. I know what you're going for. So having her, like, harp on and on and on and on and on about how racism is bad gets to a point where I'm like, do you think I'm really that dumb? Like, damn, But she needed to kind of pick a struggle with this book in the sense of it's either historical fiction or it is a fantasy. Because the fantasy elements of the magic they're well explained. Like, I was never confused by the magic system, but it's very loosely intertwined with the actual narrative in the sense of it's not really present in the world. It's there, but we don't see it. We're just told that it's there. And that is what always irritated me. Like, there's a moment towards the end of the book where they're doing their strike, and there's these silver bars that are on one of the big bridges in London. I don't know which one. I live in Texas, okay? I don't know anything about the UK. But basically, the enchantments on it fail, and the bridge falls. And we hear about it. We don't see it happening. We very rarely get to see legitimate instances of the magic occurring and being a natural part of the world. So it's kind of like this vague part of the story, and that's why I feel like she could have either entrenched it more in society and shown us it instead of just telling us about it, or she should have cut it out completely. Because from my interpretation of the book, I am white. I always like to point that out. I may not interpret racism in the best of ways, in the sense that I don't experience it, so it's hard for me to always identify the subtleties of it. But I'm also not a dumbass. And she likes to focus on the fact that there's racism in academia. It's hard for people to access it. It is hard for a lot of people, especially women of color. I was going to say women who are double minorities, and then I realized that sentence doesn't make any fucking sense. But women, people who are either queer or they don't adhere to gender norms, or they're female and they're also a person of color. Like, there's a lot of facets that tend to stack up against people, and you experience oppression very differently. Because not only are because Letty, despite being a fuck-ass annoying white lady, she does experience the issues of being a woman in higher academia, and that's a problem for her. And then there's Victoire, who is a woman of color, and she is also, she's a person of color, and she's also a woman. I know I just smashed those two topics together into one sentence. But their struggles are very different. And also, Letty is rich as fuck, and I always like to point that out, because Letty has virtually no struggles in my mind. I know, like I said, I know she deals with sexism, but Letty doesn't go through nothing. And I hate when she sits there and complains. I'm like, Letty, I know this is the point of you, but you need to shut up now. I'm sick of it. And that's the other thing. Apparently this book is supposed to have found family. Where? I will never get over that. When I heard that, I was like, are we for real? Are we dead ass? I have yet to find that element in this book. But this book is very dry, and that has never irritated me. I really enjoy this book, because I have studied this time period in school. So a lot of the historical context I got off the rip, and like I said, this book, like Chlorine, this book is not meant for your average Joe, I fear. She has footnotes in it, which personally to me, I feel like they should have gone in the back of the book. You can put them all in the back. I feel like she should have just numbered them and called it a day. I think the fake footnotes, especially in the sense that they include plot-relevant information, is horrible and a joke, and I do not know why she did that, and I really disagree with it. I think I worded that a little aggressively. But it's weird. I don't think she should have done it, and I think it hinders the book. It also makes it, like I said, longer, because when you have to smush them in at the bottom of every page, it just increases the page count. But that also is a testament to the fact that she had a fat budget for this book to be printed. Because not a lot of publishers... Is this Tor? This is a Harper book. I always ask, because Tor has a lot of money, so they can do something like that. So when I always see a fancy copy of a Tor, I'm like, that author got a good deal. But that aside, my gapping on that aside, the fake footnotes could be absolutely decimated. We don't need them. I'm sorry. We don't need them, and you shouldn't be putting plot-relevant stuff in an optional thing to read. I think that was very silly. I don't think that was a well-executed idea. Other than that, there's a lot of this book that could be cut. And I think if she had cut a lot of the flavor stuff and the unnecessary repetition of going through their education over and over and over and over and over again to get to the same point of racism is bad, we could have actually had characters that were likable. Robin has zero personality. He's a cardboard cutout. Letty is just an annoying white lady, and I hate her. She's super, 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 super annoying. I really like Victoire, and I also really liked Rami. Rami was a very funny guy, and I am sad that the one interlude chapter we have of his POV is only singular. I thought he would have been a great point of view character, and I significantly like him more than Robin, because Robin, like I said, homie has some good thoughts in like 2 scenes. That's it. It is what it is. Take it or leave it. And it makes me sad, because despite all these things, despite me trashing the fuck out of this book, this is a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I loved reading it start to finish. I was very entertained, and I liked exploring her experience, like her expertise on linguistics. That was really fascinating. I've also taken a linguistics course, so I'm kind of like the cultivated audience for this book, and that I have enough academic knowledge on most of the major topics she talks about for this to be really interesting to me. And I loved the idea of Babel as a tower, as a place of academia, and I was like, this is great! And as it kept going along, I'm like, wow, every character in this book is horrible, and it made me sad because there's so many good things about this book and also so many bad things. I think I gave this a 3-star. If I gave it a 2-star or a 4-star, I don't know what I'm talking about. I would give this book 3 stars. Because like I said, I don't think it's horrible. I think if you were the right audience for it, you will really enjoy it. But the problem is that it's just so long. And as someone who's read... I have it next to me. I've read Oathbringer. That is, I still think today, the longest book I've ever read. It's, I want to say 1,300 pages. I'm fact-checking myself. It's almost 1,300 pages. It's very long. And I've read books, like I said, significantly longer than this one. This is about 600 pages. This is about, I think, half of... I mean, if it's... What's half of 1,200? I'm so smart. Anyways, this book could have been cut shorter. And I think she should have cut it shorter. And used that space to talk more about her characters and make her characters more like actual human beings. Because that is the biggest downfall of this book, is that she wanted to talk more about the academics and she wanted to talk about the people that we're supposed to connect with as readers. And I think that that's why this book didn't hit for a lot of people. And I also think that's why this book has given her the reputation of writing textbooks, which, personally, for this one, I get why people would say that because the tone is dry, but I really don't think that is the case. And I think if you genuinely view it as a textbook, that's a bit of an exaggeration. But the tone is extremely dry, so I get why people say that. Rant over! Anyways, we get to the silly tee haha portion of the video, where I get to talk about one of my favorite authors, who I am slowly cultivating a collection of her work, and I'm so excited! So, my last 2 books are the books that I have read recently. They're the most recent, especially one being where I literally finished this book yesterday. But it's T. Kingfisher time. I love T. Kingfisher. Her work has it has whimsy. It has mysteries, depending on which one you're reading. She never fails to give you... It's usually a darker retelling of most fairy tales. Very good. Never has she had a miss for me. Almost all the books I've read of her, I think, have all been either 4 or 5 stars for me. They're so good. I have... Wrong hand. Somewhere, right here, I put my manga right there. Back in there, in that little corner, next to the tea set, is Thornhedge. And Thornhedge was gas. And wrong hand again. Right here is Swordheart. And Swordheart was also amazing. If you want to find out if her work is for you, I would deeply recommend reading Thornhedge first. Very short. Very fire. I really liked it. It was really good. Leads into it's more of the fae kind of realm in terms of fairy tale retellings. This one is of, I also never said what the fuck this book was. This is a Sorceress Comes to Call. This is her retelling of Goose Girl, I think. Yes, The Goose Girl, which, silly title, because she's a silly goose. Anyways, this book is good. It is good. It's definitely on the darker side of her work, because like I said, I've read enough of her to be like, oh, damn, this one hits a little different. So this one's much darker, and I would personally probably check some warnings if you are iffy on certain aspects of, like, not gore, but like murder and harm, like, and injuries. So I would just double check just to be safe. Do I think that this book is particularly, like, abhorrently triggering? No, but like I said, always check just to be safe. Because I do not want people to get hurt by books that they don't double check are good for them and their mental health. This book was very good. I enjoyed Hester a lot. She is our other main character. And Cordelia is very, very endearing. It's very easy to empathize with her. And the overall pace of this book was really good. There were a few moments where I saw her use some words that probably should not be used. She used the word clout a few times, which made me laugh, but this is something that, fantasy authors probably shouldn't do, which is use modern slang, but who knows? I would need to pull up the Oxford Dictionary to double check the word clout to see if it was used in what this feels like. So one of the guys is called a squire, but like this toes the line of being like, I don't want to say Regency era, but it gives a bit of like, it has the microscopic vibes of like Bridgerton. Like I said, I do not want to compare this novel to Bridgerton, because Bridgerton, as a written book, as from what I've heard, is horrible. And also, this is simply nothing like Bridgerton, but I mean more like in the sense of like Regency nobles, you know, not house politics in the sense of like Game of Thrones, but people wanting to move up in society. It's a let me recall this factoid of information I learned at school. A social mobility tale, the words tenement fiction keep ringing out in my head when I think about it, and that's not what I'm looking for. It's fine. It's an upward mobility. It's like rags to riches, kind of, but more like a Black Widow sense of like, I will slaughter my husband and then steal all his money. That is kind of what this goes for. But yes, it is much darker. The magic, fire. Loved the magic in this. I love the way she presented it in sorcery and things like that, and also the horse at the end. If you know, you know. That surprised me really badly. I was like, damn. Like I said, books rarely don't surprise me anymore, because I was like, the horse is a little freak, isn't he? But I didn't expect him to be a little freak in that sense, and that got me. It got me a little bit. But this book was really good. This is a 4-star for me. I don't think, like I said, Sword Heart, I believe, was the easy 5-star for me. If I didn't give it 5 stars, I'm a goon, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, because that book was amazing. Sword Heart is so good. Sword Heart, my beloved. I need the sequel to come out. I think it's Sword Heart and Daggerbound. Daggerbound, I believe, is August of 2026, so I'm gonna be suffering. But T. Kingfisher is putting out a lot of books this year, which means I'm gonna also be thriving. My next book of hers I want to read is definitely A House with Good Bones, because I want to get into her. I think it's what. Please tell me it's on the back. Shit. Is it in this one? Spoilers. I'm pulling out the other book I read. What Moves the Dead. Yes, her horror stuff. I want to read her horror stuff because she can write a dark plot pretty well, and I'm really intrigued. So, in the sense that Thornhedge was like my introductory like trip into her work, I'm hoping that what A House of Good Bones is going to be kind of like my glimpse into what she presents with her horror stuff. But anyways, this book was really good. Very nice. Recommend. Also very representative of women in all shapes and forms, because that's another reason why I like her books. And her romance, like her main characters, are usually all older with the exception of Cordelia. But Cordelia, also my greatest fear, because I was like, this girl is like maybe 14, like 15. Please, I pray and hope that she does not have a romance plotline with an adult. That does not happen. I want to clear that up, because I got scared in the middle of the book. I was like, please no. I beg. Please do not let this happen. It does not happen. The only romance is between Hester and someone else, who I will not mention. And Hester's like, I think she's in her late 40s. I cannot remember off the top of my head. So I feel like saying she's in her 50s is a reach. But people also talk about her like she's an old spinster. But then again, given the kind of the elements of like the Regency period, I kind of get why they call her spinster. But that aside, fire book, recommend. It's a standalone, so I always say if you want like a taste of her writing style and you don't want to like read a ginormous book, Thornhedge is a good place to start. But Sword Heart and A Sorcerer's Comes Call are also great introductions to her work. Because like I said, I thought Sword Heart was standalone. It is not. It's not. There will be a sequel, but I don't think the sequel follows Hala and Sarkis, which I fucking cry tears, but it's okay. It's okay. Next book I got was my last T. Kingfisher book for this video, and it is her recent release. I got it in Fancy Smanchy edition, so it has some little art. Hold up. This little guy in the page. I like the little guy. And, okay, I'm a fucking hater of sprayed edges. I will own that with my entire chest. I think they are hideous. The sprayed edges in this book are atrocious. I hate them so much. It's, like, I know it doesn't show up super well in this lighting. I hope it does. But these are the brightest green chartreuse pages I've ever seen in my life. They're a little bit more cool-toned than the yellowiness of, like, a traditional chartreuse. But they're hideous. I'm sorry. And that also is bad because my copy of Sword Heart also has sprayed edges. And my copy has some sprayed edges that are splotchier than the others. I don't know why. That's why also, please double check your books before you buy them, because I'll just buy a book. I'll yoink it off the shelf, put it into the cart, and think about it later. And if I had saw that specific edition had problems with it, I would not have bought it. But that's okay. It's the story that matters. But this book is Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. This is her recent release, as far as I'm aware. She might have released something before this, or after. All I know is that this is allegedly her new book. And this is her retelling of Snow White. It's very good. The magic system. Okay, this book, like I said, Sword Heart is like her romance. It's much more heavy on the romance. This book is not at all. This book is hinged on the fact that Anja, that's how I think you say her name. I have no clue. Please do not bully me in the comments. I know I am dumb. But Anja and her expertise with poison was like the peak of this book for me. I thought she was such a fascinating main character. I loved listening to her yap. Excuse me. And I deeply enjoyed learning things from her experience. She's a lady who loves the scientific method, gang. And she's super sweet. And, she doesn't say things always the best way, but neither do I. I really relate to her. I don't want to, project onto her and say that I feel like she's an autistic character, but she definitely gives a little bit of neurodivergent, and I really like her. And I think that she is amazing. And I loved hearing about just her experiments and her stuff with poison and her fun facts. I'm a lady who fucks with a fun fact, and I love that she would just tell us things. Do I think it gets a little heavy and like, oh yeah, this is a fun fact that totally isn't world building in disguise? Yes, she does do that a few times in the book where I'm like, we don't need to be heavy-handed with that stuff. But I let it slide because, like I said, I love T. Kingfisher, and I think her books are amazing. So I tend to let things that I wouldn't slide in other books slide a lot more easily in this book. But I will say that can be annoying for some people. This one is a little bit more expo dumpy. Not in a bad way. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but it does happen, and I would be irresponsible if I didn't say that it happened. But this book, very good. The romance, I will say, felt a bit sudden for me. There was not a lot of build. It kind of just presented itself. But once you really got into it, and they bonded as characters, I really, really liked it. The cat, very funny. I enjoyed the cat. As someone who owns a small demon, I do love a good, silly, goofy cat in a story. But this book's mystery and the poison elements of it, which are the main parts of the plot, fire, recommend. Really, I need to stop using brain rot terms when I make these videos, because they really hinder the experience of me sharing my literary expertise or whatever with the world. But this book was really, really good, and I think that a lot of people would like it. This book leans much more on the darker side of the whimsy, not in the same way that Sorceress Comes to Call does, but oh yeah, also, if you do not like vomit, please do not read this book. Please do not. I think we talked about vomit like every few pages, it feels like. So keep that in your back pocket. But, because I can see that making people uncomfortable, especially if you have, like, a fear of it, like a phobia. Please, this is not for you, I fear. But this book, I fiddle with the books. I'm putting it in jail, so I don't do that. This book, really good pacing, really consistent. I really liked it. I liked the themes. Like I said, I love Anja. She is the shining star of this book. If you really like a woman who likes to talk about her interests, especially a lady in STEM, or she's a lady in poison, but the M can stand for medicine, and when I mean medicine, I mean poison. But she is really, really, really good character, and I think if you just want a story that's fun and that has some magic in it, this would be a good story for you. This video is extremely long. I am now looking at the recording time on OBS, and it is long as heck. So I am probably going to wrap up. But I always say again, I like to talk about my current read. So I'm currently reading Bunny by Mona Awad. This is her most famous book, as far as I know, other than... It's on my shelf. I will not get it, but I think it's All's Well. Also, I would say it's All's Well That Ends Well, but I don't think that that's the full... You know what? Never mind. I'm getting the book. It is All's Well. I also have this, like I said. I'm going to do I like to talk about my plans and the ends of my book. And ends of my what? And the ends of my videos. So I'm reading this one. This is her most famous one. I've heard the most about this one. Like I said, it's a freaky, weird little, like, horror book. And I love a freaky, weird little horror book. So this is right up my alley. And this is about a girl who kind of is going to she's going to an MFA program, which will soon be me at some point. So that's... It was a trippy experience because she's like, oh yeah, when I go to workshop and this happens, I'm like, oh, I've been to creative writing workshops. I know what that's like. It is a little trippy in that sense for me personally. But basically, there's like this weird cult of white ladies. I'm assuming they're white. They may not be. On this campus. And they invite her into their little like salon time. And they're slowly, from what I gather, trying to indoctrinate her into their cult. And it's all centered around the fact that they call each other Bunny. And they're very physically affectionate and very squeaky, which would piss me off. But so far, very good. Very, very good. I think that this book, like I said, it hits a little different for me because I've done a lot of creative writing workshops because my minor in college was creative writing. So I do think I'm kind of just like, oh, I remember that. So it does hit strangely, but I'm not at the part, I'm only like a teensy bit through. I'm on page 65. So we haven't gotten to the part where the horror is starting to hit full force. So I can't say very much other than the fact that I really enjoyed Rouge, which is another book of hers. So I have a feeling I'll probably enjoy this one. Moving on to that. Housekeeping that I do at the end of the video, because that is when I have gathered all of my marbles into a jar and I'm able to talk about them much more easily. I would like, my goal for September reading, like the peak of September reading, is going to be the fact that I would like to finish, potentially, depending on how invested I am, the rest of TSA, of the Storyline Archive. I put it off for a while. I finally have all the books. I'm missing like one interludal book. I have, I think it's called Rift Dancer. I do not remember. I have one of the books that goes right in between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, which I will be reading, and I will be talking about that one. It's much, much shorter. But these books, as you guys know, are extremely long. And I have personal beef. I keep, like, wanting to hiccup. I had bad hiccups this morning, so if I make, like, weird faces, I'm resisting the urge. Oathbringer has beef with me, so I might not do that. And if that's the case, I'm really going to kind of reevaluate how I want to do my reading for September. I'm trying to structure my life a lot more. Ever since I got out of college, I feel like the you know, as I'm sure this is the same for a lot of college, you know, graduates, you kind of get in this weird limbo of, like, there is nothing to do with your life. Because the job market, especially where I live, is kind of booty cheeks. And it's been hard for me to get a job. So I've kind of just been wandering around with my part-time job and being like, all right, I will see where the wind takes me. So again, that's also why I've returned to content creating, because it is something I really like to do and something I need to be more consistent in doing because, like I said, it's fun for me. But oh my god, I'm slouching hella bad. But it's fun, and I need to do things that are more fun for me and take the anxiety out of having fun and, you know, feel like I'm going to say the wrong thing out of just everyday stuff, you know? I don't need to do that. And I think kind of accepting that I am the way that I am and I'm going to say things and, you know, being willing to be accountable if I say something wrong is going to go a long way. And I kind of just need to basically grow up and just record the video, you know? I also apologize, these videos are kind of long. I'm going to edit this one down, hopefully, significantly, but you never know. But yeah, so my plan, probably next video, just to give you guys a taste, I would like to do a full, like, count of the physical TBR, and I'm thinking of, if I'm not going to finish TSA in September, because that will probably take me the whole month to finish TSA, like I said, depending on how fast I read those books, because they are very long. I would like to put all the physical TBR onto a wheel. So it's inspired by this one guy off of TikTok. Cannot remember his name for the life of me. He's also on YouTube as well. His videos are funny. But he does the same thing. And I was like, I can do that. Because that's how I do chores in my life. If it's not on a wheel and it doesn't select it for me, I feel zero urge to, like, do the task. So I'm hoping if I put everything on a wheel and just spin it and pick out, like, 4 or 5 books, that I will, get a crackin' on the physical TBR. Cause I'm not a person where I will hoard the books. I tend to read a lot, so I at least feel the satisfaction knowing that I've read most of my TBR, in the sense of, like I said, I'm not just buying more and more books and then not reading any of them. Which, no shame to people who do that. I feel like if I had like an e-reader, I would do that all the fucking time. That's why I don't have an e-reader, because I think I'd go broke if that was the scenario. But I am trying to read as much of my physical TBR as I can, so that I can buy new books. But specifically, so that I can buy the rest of Dungeon Meshi, so I can talk to you guys about it, 'cause it's really good. Other than that, I think that will be all for me today. I am hoping my future video is either going to be me ranting about TSA probably for an hour straight, or it's going to be me doing a silly goofy wheel spin video for you guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. My voice tends to die at the end because I've been yapping for about an hour. But I hope that you will stick with me, and I hope that this time when I upload this video, it doesn't look like ass. And I will see you guys in the next one.